Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We'll begin our fifth episode of the Ideal Gentleman series, where we talk about marriage and how we try to be an ideal husband and a better husband. So, start off, we're going to have tilawat of the Holy Quran. So, I request Ashraf Isam Sahib to recite a few verses of the Holy Quran for us.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير.
Jazakallah. So today we're joined by Ashraf Isam Sahib, who did tilawat from Chicago, Saud Iqbal Sahib from Virginia, and Aji Etizaz Tariq Sahib from Maryland. And my name is Rizwan Khan. So we're continuing our series, and this is the last episode in our pilot project where we're just trying to talk about our experiences, positive experiences in marriage, what our efforts have been to try to be the ideal husband. So today we're going to talk about a theme which is trying to compare day one and today, what we were like when we were kind of a rookie in marriage, a groom, you could say, a dulha, and then how that's changed to being, a husband who's years into marriage when, dynamics change, things start to settle. What are the differences between those feelings? So the first question I want to go into is how our happiness has changed from day one until today. So that's the first question I want to put to you guys. And I'm interested in our thoughts on that when we think about and when we look at our happiness, what did our happiness feel like in the beginning of marriage? What does it feel like now? So what is the difference between it? I can just start off with a little point from myself that when I think back to the happiness that I felt in the beginning of marriage, I also felt like I was kind of in a hurry to get later into marriage because I don't know why. Maybe it was just wanting to grow up too fast or something, but I just didn't feel secure in that feeling of happiness. I just wanted to quickly be like 3 years, 5 years, 7 years into marriage so I can get to that point. Like I just felt kind of like insecure in that type of happiness. So I remember this feeling of uneasiness and just wanting to jump forward, wanting to move forward a few years and get this, early phase out of the way. So that's something that I remember that stands out to me.
I think for me, the happiness earlier on is really more so connected to like just the novelty. Everything you're experiencing with your wife is for the first time, and like there's also that infatuation phase. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a bad happiness or a good happiness, but there's a lot of strong emotions. There's a lot of infatuation, passion, that kind of thing that comes. Whereas later on, maybe it's something that's more stable. It's a different kind of happiness. It comes from just that stability, the gratitude and good feelings from just like having a household, having achieved something together, and all that. I think that's the transition from like that early infatuation happiness.
I agree. Like I think the earlier in the beginning of your marriage, happiness is defined something else different than what it is now. Like the small things can make you happy, just little things here and there. But I think overall, the longer you're married, you see that there are different things that make you married, just like Ashraf was saying. So the dynamics do change, and things that make you happy do change throughout the course of your marriage.
Yeah, I think like definitely, you just do. I mean, at least it's probably generally, but I definitely like did a lot of things like, you're looking to like impress this woman, your wife, so you do little things, and then like over time, like that definitely changes. It's not like, for example, like my wife is from Australia, so before she got here, whenever she would go back, I would write her letters. But then now, like later on, like I don't do that. Does that mean that I don't love her as much? No, but it's just a different, just a different vibe, a different way to go about things.
Yeah. Like letters is something that I've never done.
But you wrote a physical letter, like you posted it in the mail, and
I wrote like a OG letter, like handwritten, all that.
Yeah, I
sent
think
him post.
I think there's beauty to that though, because I mean, I did because in the beginning, like when my wife and I were in our engagement space, so we didn't really talk much on the phone. I didn't really, neither of us wanted to go down that road because you don't really get to know each other through there. So yeah, I mean, we did write letters, and I think like it's kind of old fashioned, but it does have something unique to it because then, I mean, we still have those letters. I still have those letters sitting in my, sitting in my
Yeah.
closet, and sometimes we pull it out on the anniversary and read it. So I mean, it has a sort of sweetness to it. It's nice, and
Yeah,
there is that.
actually, at first I was like, "That's kind of ridiculous," but now I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking back, and actually, yeah, there were some letters early on, especially since we were in different states and stuff. So yeah, there was some letters. Now it's the best I could do is probably like a well thought out GIF or something. But
Yes, now it's all about memes, man. You gotta have that perfect meme. If you don't send it right, she won't talk to you for a few hours.
Yeah, but then now we got video talking because now that I think about it, like I mean, back in the day it must have been so hard because when my wife travels somewhere or something like that, then that video calling, that kind of helps to form a connection, and it makes you not really miss each other as intensely as you otherwise would. So I mean, yeah, I feel like there's no need for like texts and letters when you can just like, video chat every day and get caught up and everything like that. But one
Yeah, I
thing
guess
that
you're right. When you have so many technological like advances in terms of connections with each other, like having that old school vibe, like you said, like writing actual letter, that kind of goes a long way because it shows that you took the extra step to care. So, you know, that's a good idea for anybody early
yeah,
But
on.
there's
that
definitely
that technology gap though, like is serious though, because prior to like video calling, like, or for example, again, my wife just traveled to Australia, so she was texting me from the plane, like until she went over the Pacific. Every like, so just thinking about that prior, it's like you wouldn't be able to have that connection, like it's just crazy that.
Yeah, one change in dynamics I did notice though is like last time my wife went to Germany. So there was like when I'd be video calling her, she'd have more stuff to do. So like suddenly there was a shift in the dynamics of our relationship where like otherwise she's kind of trying to get my attention. And so now when I was video calling her, she's kind of like she's dealing something with the kids. Maybe she's hanging out with her parents or siblings. And I'm like, can I get some attention over here? So like there was a definite shift where I was now the one who was pursuing and I wasn't really comfortable with that. But then it kind of created an appreciation that sometimes you have to be the one who's loved, sometimes you have to be the one who loves, and then you kind of when the dynamics are switched, then you appreciate the other person and like kind of the role they play in the relationship.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think for me, just thinking about the question, the dynamics definitely is the biggest shit. And it's, I think really what it comes down to is that novelty. So like what's left, if something is like exciting and brings you happiness just because it's the first time you're doing it, that's not really like something that like you would say is something at least of true happiness, because it's just the novelty. I mean, driving your car for the first time versus driving it for the thousandth time to work is a very different experience. Anybody, you don't have to be married to relate to that. I think in some semblance it's the same thing there. Like that once what's there when the novelty wears off, whatever is left, that's what you can really say is happiness.
But that point on novelty, I guess it goes personality to personality because there's some people who just really like things that are just steady and familiar and things like that. So, I mean, I was doing some research on depression for some other thing, and I was surprised to see one of the causes of depression is like things changing in your life dramatically, even like, marriage or something like that. No, alhamdulillah, I didn't experience anything like that. But I do feel like maybe, I guess I'm more inclined towards what's familiar. Just sticking to, like real, even nostalgia. When I watch stuff, when I listen to music, sometimes I listen to stuff that I listened to when I was in middle school. And even though like I'm listening to it and I'm like, this is an objectively bad song, but there's something about that memory of, connecting it with the past that kind of creates a comfort. So I guess for some people, for me, like what I described earlier, that novelty was something that did have an excitement to it. But then like I wanted the novelty to be familiar so that then I would be able to enjoy kind of the security and the comfort in it. I guess that was a bit of what my experience was.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I think it's a little bit different. Like, I mean, I think the novelty is what keeps the relationship fresh, because if you're doing the same thing over and over again, then it kind of like the thought behind it kind of goes down. So if you do something different and kind of novel, then that kind of like, oh wow, you put a lot of thought into that, and that's really, special. So that's the stuff that you remember, and that's kind of the things that make you happy when at the moment, because this is something different that somebody
Yeah.
did.
I mean, yeah, there's always difference. I guess what I was saying was that, like, for example, going out to eat to a dinner with your wife for the first time, that kind of feeling, that's new. Now you can still achieve some novelty today. Maybe you go to a restaurant you've never gone to before. That's some novelty. but
Mm.
the experience of going out to dinner with your wife, you're not going to experience that for the first time again. That, I guess that's what I was saying.
Mm. One thing that just came to my mind about like day one and today is kind of like the level to which I've gotten sort of comfortable. Um, because there's certain behaviors that I'm seeing in myself which are characteristic uncle behaviors, what you would call like people who make dad noises. Because when you get so comfortable in your house, kind of like just being like, with your kids around, you're kind of like the head of the household. So then you start getting too comfortable and too confident. Like I remember in the beginning of my marriage, I mentioned this to you guys one time before as well. Like I wasn't even comfortable eating chicken wings in front of my wife because there's no civilized way to eat chicken wings. And so you got to get it like on your face a little bit. And it's not dignified. But now I've kind of feel like I'm trying to stop myself from going on the opposite extreme where I'm just like getting a little bit too comfortable.
Two-handed.
Like having in the room, you open the door.
Yeah. So I think there's some of that. There's some good formality in the beginning that needs to be retained, 7, 8 years later. But yeah, there's definitely so another point.
Can you eat chicken wings?
Yeah, no, I love
That's
chicken wings.
Can you eat
I
chicken?
eat it all the time. There's no obstacle. There's
Go hide in
just
the
no
Yeah. But maybe that's a part of the happiness too. Maybe that's like having the comfort and being comfortable in your own skin. Like that's something that maybe at first you're still a little self-conscious about certain things. I mean, you could say that like, how you have happiness in like your own bedroom, your own space, like you feel safe. I mean, in a way once you feel safe in that relationship, that contributes to the happiness too. Cause, maybe you're not trying to impress all the time. I mean, it can be a positive and a negative, but having that comfort, I think, can also lead to happiness.
Mm. Yeah, another point on rookie versus veteran, I guess you can say, is like how has communication improved in marriage, or how has communication changed? So what about that? Like the way we communicated with our wife in the beginning of the marriage, like is there a distinct difference in the way that we communicate now?
Yeah, I think definitely there's a very big difference in terms of communication. I mean, I think especially for me, when in the beginning of my marriage, like, we really don't know, what is expected to talk about or what you're expected to kind of share. So you're kind of in that kind of gray area in terms of what to communicate about and what not to communicate about. But then, like the longer you're married, the more comfortable you are in talking about everything and everything. So I think that's where it's changed now, where now me and my wife can just talk for hours about everything. We don't have to worry about, is this going to offend? Is this going to upset? Because, we're comfortable with each other. So the more comfortable you are, the more you communicate. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah,
Mm.
because that you're just building trust like over time, So like in the beginning, like I wouldn't say like I'm walking on eggshells, but you kind of are because you're still trying to, I'm still trying to impress my wife. I'm still trying to, be like, in control of like the conversation, like, you're, be emotionally aware. And then like over time when you're like comfortable, like then it's just natural, it's like a natural flow of energy. You're not, I wouldn't say forcing it, but you're not thinking twice about it. It just comes and then it's like, it just flows.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think another aspect is like maybe there's certain things that like you're like, okay, maybe this is better left unsaid, or this might cause a disagreement if I bring it up. But I think later on, once that, like you said, that trust builds, then you don't have to kind of just let certain things fester, or maybe it can lead to like some passive aggression. You're more upfront to like, you know what, let me address this. It's not that big of a deal. We can talk about it. I think once you have that trust and comfort, the communication improves there too.
Yeah, then the passive aggressiveness like goes away because like, I mean, yeah, you might have it here and there, like if you're hangry or something, you haven't gotten food or whatever, but like overall, like, that causes that like passive aggressiveness to just kind of just diminish, man, because, then like,
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
you have to be able to, break those eggshells, if that metaphor makes sense. But I'm saying like you have to be able to talk about things that because if you don't break those eggshells, you're never going to know like what's cool, and you're never going to be able to open yourself up because you're just too scared. So once time goes on, you'll be able to talk about more, and you won't have to be worried about if anything will upset because you have that relationship and that trust, like you guys said.
Yeah. When it comes to communication styles, there was like something that I learned along the way, which is like, because my parents, or my dad at least, he's from like, him and his brothers, they speak Punjabi. And I don't know if you've seen, but like, when Punjabi uncles talk, it's just yelling is like the normal tone of voice. You think that they're all mad at each other, but that's just how they're chilling. And so me and my sisters, we talk like that as well. When we're like together and we start disagreeing on something, then like just the volume of our voices goes kind of high. And then we're like debating things that are just like issue related. And that was something very different for my wife because, you know, in her, she doesn't have that culture in her household where they don't raise their voice unless somebody's like actually being hostile and aggressive. And also they don't talk about like issue related things. I mean, I know when I hang out with my in-laws, it's like a different feel. And I kind of like it more because it's more kind of feeling family oriented. It's just a little bit different. So then I noticed that in my marriage, you know, sometimes when we would disagree on something and I start getting into the argument, that's when like my wife would say that, no, I don't want to argue. I don't want to talk about this. I don't like arguments. And I'd just be getting warmed up. I'm like, I just had some good points in my mind. And I was just getting, I was like, my blood pressure is right at the point where I'm about to, about to
The
really
sweet
win the
spot.
yeah. So I mean, see, so yeah, it's like an appreciation of like the fact that other people are not always comfortable in that kind of confrontational thing where some people just feel alive in that place. So that was
Yeah.
definitely an area where I kind of came to appreciate and change that, like, no, when we're discussing something serious and we have to do it like very calmly, cautiously, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
that brings
that's
up
a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that brings up another point too, is that, you know, communication is not just like the same for every person
Yeah.
you deal with, right? Because, you know, in a marriage, you're not just married to your wife, you're married to the family. So like you said, you know, when you're talking to your wife, your communication is different compared to how you talk to your parents or how you talk to her parents. So, you know, you have to be able to, you know, cater to their personalities and how their kind of their backgrounds are. So, you know, you're not just, you know, doing the same thing for
Yeah,
everybody.
no, I was gonna say exactly that. It's not like a one size fits all thing. And like I'm trying to think like now at home, my mom's living with me, and obviously I have trust with my mom in a certain relationship. I have the same a certain trust and relationship with my wife, but the communication style is very different. Like again, because I'm speaking it maybe it's a different language kind of thing, but similar to what you were saying about Punjabi, like the way I can talk to my mom, I can say the same thing and it'll just be understood a certain way. If I use the same phrases, the same tone with my wife, maybe it could lead to an argument. So definitely it's not the same. It's not a one size fits all. It's more about developing and understanding how to better communicate with someone. So you learn, you build that with your wife, but we can't say that this is how you should talk to your wife and go guaranteed ticket to you know, don't try this at home kind of thing.
Yeah, you just got to know the person, and it's like exactly that. It's like over time, then you're going to be able to pick up on those styles or like the style of communication. And like, you know, a lot of people are introverts or extroverts, so you kind of got to like figure out whatever's going on, and then like work with, you know, exactly what you guys are saying. I mean, I agree. Like the way I talk to my mom, I don't talk to my mother-in-law the same way. It's just like it's a different vibe. It's a different energy. You know, their household is different, and those different feelings that Murphy Stop was talking about is definitely there. Like it's just a different environment. Whether it's, you know,
He has to
yeah.
pull out the Australian accent to talk to his mother-in-law.
No,
Hello.
no, no, not at all. But I mean, yeah, no, not at all. I mean, even my wife's accent is like gone away now, and everyone's like, "What? You're from Australia?" She's just like, it's not, "This is all your fault," and I'm like, "What?"
yeah.
But yeah.
No, Australian accent is not that distinct as some other accents, but
It can
Yeah,
be.
it
can be.
depends though. Yeah,
Oh
if you
yeah.
get out into their countryside, you know,
Okay.
there it's a little. It's like I mean, you know what? You after the call is over, you might as well like just YouTube Crocodile Dundee, and then you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. One aspect that I find like when it comes to communication is humor. And I remember there was like a very definite transition where like in the beginning we just were not getting each other's jokes. And so like one for me, I can't fake laugh at somebody's joke that I didn't get. I mean, it kind of becomes an issue even in like normal social situations where somebody, you know, you're supposed to politely laugh and then like there'll be like zero, no reaction. And then it'll create this awkward thing. But like,
Just
yeah,
crickets. I'm just imagining
yeah.
crickets in your dinner table.
Yeah. No, I mean in normal situations too. But yeah, there was like a phase there where we just weren't like I didn't really get my wife's jokes and she wasn't getting my jokes either because my jokes are kind of weird. They're like dark humor or I don't know, just kind of they can be pretty offensive if you don't know it's a joke. So like it took a while for us to get it, but once we got to that point, then felt like communication was so much better because humor is very very important in any kind of a relationship. But I mean, I don't really think that can apply to any relationship. I remember in Jamia, I had roommates where like for a while we just didn't really like get each other's jokes, but then after a while, like after a month or two, we'd just be having a blast. So that's what I'm kind of interested in as well. Like, what did you guys find as far as like sense of humor? How did you kind of meet in the middle where you're able to be able to laugh at each other's jokes?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the same thing. It's like once you build trust, you understand the communication. You also understand the jokes better, definitely.
Was there a period where
And
it
it's
was
not
just
just
like
the jokes.
jokes were
I
not
think it's not
translating?
just the jokes. It's also like, I don't remember something you were saying that you can't laugh, but like like the intangibles are very important as well, like because if you say something and you like have like a goofy demeanor or like a goofy face with it, then your wife knows that's a joke, and then that kind of breaks the ice as well. But if you just have like a deadpan joke and nobody can tell if you're joking or not, then yeah, that's definitely gonna be confusing in the beginning because they don't really
But from
know.
day
But
one,
I think
was
it's
there like a
important.
phase where you weren't getting each other's humor, or did that take a little bit of time?
I personally don't even remember. I mean, honestly, I don't remember specifically if it was like, like I'd say a joke and be like, doesn't, waiting like, and then nothing, like, so now though, like, over time, again, you develop that trust and like, you almost become like the same, like if comedy and humor is your thing, like this comedic like thing, it's like, all right, most of the time, it's the same thing that makes us laugh. But there's still distinctions. Like there's some shows that my wife watches where I'm just like, I don't get it. But then there's things like the whole like 45 minutes of the show will go by and then 1 minute and I then burst out in laughter and she's just like, what? Like it doesn't even make sense. And I'm like, that's me, man. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel that's actually a good point because, like, I would say that I understand my wife's sense of humor and vice versa. But so, like, if I'm saying something, she'll get it. But we can, if she finds something funny that, like, on a third party, I might not find it funny still. So we still have our own different sense
Yeah.
of humors. We just understand each other more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have to have like inside jokes too, right? The inside jokes are the funniest because they're just between you two, and then
Oh yeah.
you can,
Yeah.
those are
Yeah. I
the
mean,
best.
with
But
communic
there's yeah,
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
so no, real quick, I was just saying like there's also jokes like, you can like you both will be able to understand, but then if anybody else hears it, they're just like, what is wrong? Like, what is wrong with these
Yeah.
people? Like that doesn't even make sense or whatever, it's like off some plane, but it's like, no, you don't get it, and you can never explain it. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with communication, like part of it is, figuring out how to communicate, like, and not bring up certain subjects in the wrong way, and avoid miscommunications. But yeah, I do feel definitely like humor is something that smooths over so much because it helps to navigate through a lot of the things that come up that are difficult. So, continuing the theme of, day one versus today, this is also something that, what have we improved to try to make ourselves into a better husband? Again, thinking back to day one and up until today, what is something that we've improved about ourselves to try and be a better husband? It's such a broad question. I can't think of anything that specifically comes to mind. But what comes to you guys' mind when you think about that?
I mean, I
Um,
think just like making like obviously like maybe the communication in the beginning, like just I said this before and I'll say it again, just being you know men in the beginning, and then understanding that like, all right, these type of like whatever's going on, you know what, I completely lost what I was saying. Just go ahead.
I mean, for me, I think a lot of it is maybe things that not necessarily improved because of the marriage or relationship, but things that also come from age. Day one, you're very young. Like when I got married, I was well, I guess sometimes you're very young. When I got married, I was like 20, so I was still quite young, and I had never had a roommate. For college, from back home, I had my own bedroom, and in college, I always had singles. So I never even had a roommate. So my wife was my first roommate, I guess. So like just things like that, adjusting to things like that, that having, I was also not really very helpful with like chores and like household chores and stuff like that. And that's something that really can't fly for that long. Like you kind of have to improve on that. So I would say like things like that, I've definitely improved on, being more mindful of like helping and things that come with like having a roommate, I guess. So stuff like that, I would
That's
say.
a good way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, maybe one thing that kind of helps think about the question is like, what is one thing that you think you do right that makes your marriage happy? So, I mean, because I think the last question, I mean, I was kind of struggling with it as well. But like when I think about one thing that I think I do right, because you can kind of think about that in any kind of relationship. What is it that makes this relationship work? So, I mean, when
One,
I think about what is one thing,
right.
yeah, go ahead. So,
I was gonna say the one thing that I feel like I do right is not I don't take things that seriously and many things to heart. I think that helps a lot because that kind of avoids a lot of unnecessary arguments or confrontations. Because I think a lot of the stuff that comes is like like Ajibai is saying, like you have to be the man, and I have to do this and this and that. So I mean that encompasses not being able to take things to heart, because if you can like forgive and forget, and if you can overlook things, then it makes your day and you makes your life, makes your year much more easier to pass, because you're not spending the day or wherever the time is angry at useless things. So I think that's what I think I do right. I take things chill and you know go day by day.
Hmm. I think there's something that translates over from spirituality in this area, which is like, when you're feeling down, then that's when you have to just make sure you keep a basic standard. As the Masih Maud Islam talked about that as well, that in spirituality, there come times when you don't even want to do namaz at all. But those are the times where you have to make sure that, you maintain the basic discipline. And you don't just say like, okay, I'm just going to not do namaz for like a whole day or until I feel better. That's not how it works. So I think that kind of training in spirituality, it kind of helps in marriage as well, because I find that there are times when I'm just not having a good day. And those days I feel like just being completely selfish, just keeping to myself, just not worrying or thinking about anybody but myself. But then that kind of same training kicks in that no, like just because I'm feeling down doesn't mean that I'm just going to throw everything out the window and let it go and just be to do whatever I want to do. And I think that's one thing that's helped, because I feel like when I've been down, then that's where I would like, get irritable and say things that would then, cause friction. And I think that's really helped a lot. I mean, I mean, my wife and I, alhamdulillah, barely have tension anymore. And even just recently, I mean, these talks have helped me actually, because like just yesterday, I was in that mood. I was just feeling down. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But then I realized when I looked within myself that everything I'm finding to be irritable is because I'm irritable. Like anything that like my kids were doing or my wife was doing, on any other day, it wouldn't bother me. There was nothing I could identify that anybody was doing different that would actually bother me on another day. And so then I realized that, okay, it's all me. And then just focus on me then. Don't take it out on somebody else. Don't think that why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's actually just about me. So I think that's something that I don't think I did in the beginning of marriage or before marriage, but maybe that's one thing that's kind of helped to
Yeah,
avoid
that's
conflict
a
and
really
just to
good
try and
point.
be
That's a
better.
really good point. I think like the point you made is really good about focusing on yourself, because a lot of the time I think people should try to change the other person, but I think the main thing we should remember is you got to change yourself first, and you have to be the person that you would want to be other person to be as well. So you can't just be a jerk and then expect the other person to be an
Yeah.
angel. So like you have to like you said, change yourself, make sure you're the best person you can be, and not try to change the other person. So I think that's a good
Yeah,
point.
because no, because like especially if you bring bad energy into something, and like Barbie was saying, like it's like a simple like just you communicate with your wife about whatever, like maybe she asks you something, and like on like you said on any other day it's no big deal, but because you're tired or whatever, like I think it really is important to just like build on yourself. And I think like I've definitely like made many mistakes like in the beginning, and then over time just like owning up to like what I've done in just like lack of communication or whatever, and just being like, yeah, that's on me. And like not even have to verbally saying it, but just kind of like having that energy where you're dead wrong, and then you just make it better,
Yeah.
so
No, that was a very profound point. I definitely can't sit here and say I'm there. There's definitely days where I'm like, today I just got to do me. I'm not feeling this. So that's very profound to like keep a standard. One thing I would say, I guess, to not just say something negative, is that one thing that was helpful from day one to now, I think there's like this concept that if you have an argument, it's not you versus your wife. It's really you and your wife versus the problem. So you're like just framing it that way, that it's you as a team trying to solve something rather than you two butting heads. I think that helps. Also goes in line with like the whole don't go to bed angry. I think if you are always framing something positively, you don't let these kind of problems fester, because sometimes you're like, okay, just give each other space. I'm not really a big fan of that. Like I feel like that just like you're not solving anything by just like giving. Maybe people cool down or something, but like if you just frame things in the right way and try to like problem solve in the right way, I don't think you have to just give each other space or be passive aggressive or don't address stuff.
Mm.
I think that's one thing that's changed. Yeah.
Yeah. On that point you made, Aji, about like owning up, I think that's something that comes from maturity as well. Because like I feel like in the beginning, when you make mistakes and there's miscommunications, then sometimes it's easy to get defensive. Like sometimes we can like express our frustration by being critical, and then we get defensive. If I'm critical, then I'm not just like speaking negatively about the action someone did. I'm actually speaking negatively about the person. So there, like owning up to our mistakes, it takes a lot of confidence, because we basically say that, okay, I'm not gonna, even if like, she holds this against me, I don't care. I'm just gonna do what I think is right, and just gonna like have the confidence to say that, yeah, it's on me. I made a mistake, and then I'm gonna try not to do that again. But it takes trust though. And there's so many things that can corrode the trust with bad communication. It seems easy to say own up, but I know that there's a lot of relationships, and even some relationships I've experienced in my life, where like it's just so hard to own up, because like it's gotten toxic over time. And just that simple thing of owning up is like such an accomplishment. It's a display of trust, and I think that's something that kind of has to be learned and earned. So yeah, in my marriage, alhamdulillah, like I do see that it is easier to do, but it's just there because of trust. It wouldn't be there otherwise. It's impossible to do otherwise.
I think another thing I would add, I think these are great points. I think another thing I would add, and maybe, I mean, this is maybe in my case, maybe not in all cases, but I think in general, if there is some kind of argument, my wife tends to be the one to back down more and kind of like, just avoid a problem more. And sometimes just because it seems to have passed, you should still take that step and go and apologize. Like, sure, it's gone now. It's not an issue now. But I think having that humility and going to apologize and, just making sure everything's okay, like taking that extra step, I think matters a lot. Because a lot of times maybe your wife has let it go and you think it's done and stuff, but things can stay there, things can fester, maybe they come up later. But if you take that extra step and say, I wanted to apologize for earlier, I wanted to kind of, revisit this, make sure everything's okay. I think that's something that I've also kind of improved.
Yeah, it's much better to kind of resolve the situation as fast as possible rather than let it linger, like you said, because it's easier to calm down a small issue rather than let it build up, and then just have it explode and it gets out of control. Then you're like, whoa, what just happened? Because you've been holding it in. So it's easier to, like you said, have that communication and resolve these issues as fast as possible, and build that trust as well, because
Yeah.
So
I don't think it ever. Yeah, I don't think it ever works out if you like let it like fester or just like wait, because I don't think that's ever worked for me. And honestly, I can't. I like not freak out, but I just can't, like, if I made a mistake or an argument or whatever, like I can't allow that like silence. It's not even awkward silence for me. It's like literally killing me every second. It's like I'm just like, my wife is upset. I'm an idiot. I want to fix this, but I don't want to, like, I know she's going to be annoyed if I'm like immediately. So like, it's like, you just have to be professional, and like, you have to be a mature person to be able to navigate that in a efficient way without letting it, be prolonged. Like it's not going to work if it goes and drags.
Yeah. One angle of it that comes to my mind is like, when we're talking about, problem solving and doing all these things, how much of it depends on the person we chose to marry. And I know I brought this up before, and like Ashraf, you had said at that time that like, you can't really know how you would be with another person because you would work out your problems differently. But I mean, I guess one specific angle that I have in my mind is that how would I function if I, God forbid, had married someone who was a bad wife, like a bad spouse? There's just like not like very, because the thing is, I feel like if two people are just okay functional, then they can make the marriage work. If one person is a bad husband or wife, then if the other person is a good husband or wife, they can make it work. But if they're both kind of bad, then of course it can go, or maybe something doesn't click between them, it can go really bad. So I mean, when I think about it, when I look at some marriages that have gotten bad, that have gotten toxic, things like that, like I definitely don't see myself as being above that. Like I think that if I had a bad wife, not talking about like just somebody else, I'm thinking about like somebody who is actually like kind of, bad at being a wife or a spouse, then I don't think I could have made it work, because there's just so many vulnerabilities there. It's so easy to kind of get like defensive, to not want to communicate, to say. So I feel like when I look at it from that perspective, it all comes down to having chosen the right person, having chosen, because like if I was a good husband, then I should be able to make it work with a vast number, like, you know, spectrum of people. Even like a bad wife, I'd be able to make it work with her. Right? Definitely don't see that. I couldn't make it with a bad wife. I don't even think if I could make it with someone who was like an average spouse. I need somebody to be a good spouse with me. So like that I think is where it really comes shining, like, you know, our own character. So because like the issues that we're talking about, does it really come down to us having just kind of, you know, married someone who's a good spouse? Or is it just we're just as vulnerable to all these
I think
things?
that brings up a bigger question, Marisa. I think that, you know, having what if you married a bad spouse? I think like you have to think about it as like at what point do you think that you could have changed that person versus lived with that person, or you know, you have to know, like, you know, because a lot of people do that. They think that, oh, you know, this person has flaws, but you know, I'll change her, I'll fix her up, you know, I'll be able to, you know, like let her, like, fix her up, you know what I mean? So how much of that is the case, or how much of it is, you know, yeah, she's bad and I'm not willing to kind of help her, you know, be better
I,
in that.
I guess for me, I mean, I can definitely see that point. There's definitely a point where it's just, you know, a bad wife. But and obviously if my wife's listening, I'd say that anything that's working in marriage is because she's so great and amazing. But but like if it's a hypothetical, and to answer a hypothetical, I really don't think that it's that binary. Like for example, you said that like early on your wife wouldn't laugh at your jokes and there was like some awkwardness. Does that mean she had a bad sense of humor? Like you could say, you know what, my jokes are only going to work with someone who have a good sense of humor or an average sense of humor. It wouldn't work with a bad sense of humor. But then it developed, right? It developed over time. So I really think that there's not really, I mean, there are exceptions that are extreme, but really there's bad wives and good wives in different aspects. And so the same way that maybe you had to work hard to fix one aspect of your relationship, that maybe, or another aspect you didn't have to worry about because you were already good at that.
So you're saying that like there's no bad wives and husbands, there's no bad
There
spouses,
are, there
unless
are, but
someone is like,
I would say it's a lot closer to not being binary. Like,
yeah, yes. So I mean, like those are exceptions. They're like people who are like just dysfunctional or toxic people. But most people, they're okay spouses, whether husband or wife. But then the reason why some marriages don't work out, or they're just kind of like not good, is because maybe they just what is it? I mean, they just didn't like click right, or they just.
I mean, I know we want to keep it to anecdotes, but there was like an interesting study that another group talked about. The Rishtanara team was talking about, like there's a study that said that they looked at a bunch of different relationships across, you know, different incomes, different type of personality metrics. They looked at a lot of stuff, and they basically said that the most important thing was not the person you chose, but the relationship you built. It didn't matter whether you started off, one was rich, one was poor, one was of this race, one was of this age. It basically ended up all being about like what kind of relationship was built, what was built in the relationship. It wasn't the starting point. So to me, that's where like that lends credence to, like, it's not really about the starting point. It's more about how did you react from there.
Yeah, I guess.
because
Go ahead,
no,
Naji.
I just feel like, I mean, personally, like the type of person I am, like I don't know, like if I would even be able to recognize, like, especially like at 23, 24 when I got married, like, is this person like a bad wife? You know, like I just think I was just young enough where it's like, you know, just going with the flow with the process. Like I don't know if I had the ability at that time to be able to be like, oh, my spidey senses are tingling, like something's like, I don't know. Like, there's just no way to be able to determine that. Like I can't look back and like see it going any other way. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think another problem is that kind of attitude. Maybe it could become a little self-defeating and kind of self-fulfilling, where it's like, instead of working out this problem or trying to better myself, it's more like, oh, you know what, this is not going to work. She's just bad. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
We just are not compatible. Like, so I feel like that lends itself to that kind of attitude rather than trying to build and work on something.
Yeah, because you're almost,
And
if with that point, you're like, it's like you're almost waiting for that moment of like, I gotta go. Like, I gotta go.
There it is.
Yeah.
But you also got to think about like what I mean. The term "bad wife." I think I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, because there's so many different things that you can categorize for it. Like, you know, like what if she has, you know, like a mental illness, or what if she has some sort of underlying medical issue or something that you're just characterizing as a bad person. You know, like, are you gonna bounce because of that, or are you gonna, are you going to try to get her treatment? Are you going to try to help her out? Maybe they need help. So I don't know, like this whole concept of what if I married a bad wife? I don't understand. I guess it needs more kind of definition towards what does that
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
where do you draw the line in that in terms of,
Yeah, and
you
it's
know,
not to sit here and be like, oh, like pie in the sky, like, oh no, it's gonna work out with anyone. Like there's definitely cases
Yeah.
where the dysfunction
Yeah.
is so much or the incompatibility is so much. But I agree. I think that you should lean towards the side of I can make it work, and it's more about making it work. I
yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
safer to lean that
Yeah,
way.
maybe there's a lot more nuance to it because I guess the way that I felt inclined to thinking about it is that, if a marriage doesn't work out or if there's, dysfunction in a relationship, then maybe it's just because, there's a level to which a person is good just in that dynamic, in it being a spouse. There's some people who are great, as salesmen, they're really great as putting on a front. But there's other people who are not really terrible at putting on a front. They're really bad at a date, but then in longer term relationships, they're much better. So, I mean, I guess in my mind, I just had this idea that maybe there's like a skill level, like you're like a level 10 husband, level 3 husband, or something like that. But like, I mean, what you guys are saying is that basically that, I mean, we're all pretty much okay, but then it's just like just poor choices that end up doing it. Because when you see a marriage that deteriorates, like people get bitter towards each other and like, it just becomes bad. And that makes me think that, okay, maybe that's in me as well. Maybe
Yeah.
there was just maybe if I was in a bad situation, I could have done that as well. Or I don't know what the factors are. I mean, I was just curious about that. That's kind of like a side question, but I don't know. I mean, it is interesting trying to diagnose exactly.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think to take your analogy of the level 3, level 10, I think if you look at actual video games, not to get too nerdy, no one's like just a level 3. You're a level 3 with like 10 attack, 10 defense, 10 special power, whatever. Like, so maybe there is someone who's 10 attack but really bad at defense. So you might struggle with the defense side of things. And another person is also level 3 but really good at defense, bad at attack. So like it's just aspects that might be an issue that you have to work on versus other aspects may come very easily and you don't have to worry about it at all.
Okay. So there's another point which kind of goes a little bit away from the theme of like day one to today. It kind of goes back to that theme we were talking about in expectations versus reality. But I mean, I thought, we're in the 5th episode here and, we've been talking for a while on marriage and things like that. So it'd be interesting to kind of give a male perspective on something that usually we don't have a lot of insight into, which is that how important was emotional commitment to me before I got married. And I mean, I remember we talked about this before when we were talking about entertainment and things like that, like just infatuation and stuff like that. But what I'm talking more about is how important was long-term love to me before I got married. I mean, is that something that I was thinking about before marriage? Because it feels like, or it seems like this is something that definitely matters more to women than it does to men. That dream of a happy marriage, a long-term, fulfilling, emotionally fulfilling relationship. So then before we got married, when we were looking for a spouse, when we were imagining an ideal marriage years into the future, like was that emotional bond, that love and that happiness, was it a top priority when we were looking for a marriage, or was it not so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely was looking for like, like a friend, like a long-term friend versus like, like I gotta find, I don't think I even thought about it beyond that though, like not going into like the metrics of it and the logistics of like, is this gonna be a long-term, like, till death do us part, I hate to use the phrase, but it is what it is. Like, I don't think I thought about that. I think I just was like, I think as 23, 24, you're caught up in that moment of like, I gotta impress this woman. I gotta be the top. I gotta be like the best husband I can be to be accepted. And then it's like, then you're just going with the flow after that. I think as like a young man, like I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question might just be depending on when we got married. Again, I was like 19, 20. It was when I was 19, I was, more focused on maybe sports and school and not really thinking that deeply about like how long or what kind of emotional commitment. I mean, I wasn't like a stereotypical jock, but like it's
I mean,
not like something
the
that,
For
kind of
me, I think it
areas
was like,
what did a happy 40-year-old me look like when I was 20 years old? Because I mean, I'm going a little bit into stereotypes, but since women are more family oriented, this is something that, comes out, especially after children, there's like a biological difference there. So because of that, like the picture that a woman has more than a man has when she thinks about what is happy me at 40 or 50 years old, it's a more family oriented picture, like a happy with a husband, loving relationship with a husband. But then what was my ambition? Like, do men have that ambition that when I'm 20 years old, when I'm thinking about me as a successful 40, 50-year-old, does that look like me happily with my wife, or does it
Yeah,
involve
I think
some
so,
other
definitely. I
ambitions?
think for me, for my example, like I got married maybe like a year after I graduated college and I got my first job. So at that time, I was thinking that, I'm just starting my career. I'm just starting my life. I want to share my, achievements and my successes and everything I'm going to grow into with somebody, because, you could have, your car, your house, or whatever promotion you're doing, but it feels much better when you're doing it with somebody and you're sharing that happiness with somebody like a life partner. So I think, yeah, for me, I definitely had that desire to share my successes and my growths with somebody, so then we can grow together and kind of share these life milestones together. So I think, yeah, for me it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it depends what you're asking. I mean, I think closer to marriage, when you're seriously considering marriage, those are kind of things you think about. Before that, like growing up, visualizing myself in the future as what is a successful adult, I would say it's more your stereotypical, like, oh, good job, or an MBA or whatever, like daydreams you have. Not really like, thinking about an emotional commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel
I
like
said in real
definitely,
time.
like as a teenager and a young adult, there is that thing of like happiness is in achieving ambitions, achieving greatness. And I've heard this from like other people, that Americans, we have like a delusion of grandeur where we all think we're like superstars, where we're destined for
Yeah.
greatness. And I mean, I definitely feel like there was something like that in me as well, which is like, go like life is a mission, and to try and do the most you can to achieve that mission. And then like, marriage and happy family life is something that's there as well. But yeah, definitely getting closer to marriage. And I think maybe through marriage, like, maybe going back to that, day one until now, like having that more feminine, maternal, family oriented kind of dream of a happy future, I think is definitely much closer to happiness. Because whatever mission that I thought I had in life, or I made in life, aside from just pure spirituality, I hope that by the time I'm 50 years old, I'm a saint. That's like that's the reason why I went to Jamia. That's the reason why I would do anything. But like after that ambition, there's like nothing you can achieve in the world that would actually make you happy. Like even if you fail in every other ambition, but if you have a happy wife, you're happy, you go home to a happy, loving home. Even if I failed in every other worldly ambition that I might have had, I would still be happy. And I guess that, I mean, I feel like in that way the male ambition is a little bit kind of misguided. And
Yeah, I think, but I think all that, like that the fuel behind all that, that driving factor is like the society we live in. I think like being living in America is like pushes that envelope, especially like for men, like this, career driven, like promotion, whatever industry you're in, you gotta go, achieve this like level of what social economic status. But I've definitely, like I keep bringing this up, but my wife is from Australia. So the way that their society is there, the way that like less emphasis on like money, income, and like socioeconomic status, it's really like different. When I went there, I felt it. It was
yeah, I
like
noticed the
it was
same thing as well. Sorry, I'm just, yeah,
it
I mean,
was
just because my
yeah.
wife's from Germany, and like my brother-in-law
Yeah.
told me that as well, that like in Germany, people are more content just to have like a normal, simple, happy, life. They don't have this ambition of wanting to be the greatest at this in the world, with to the point of like that reality star delusion that sometimes we're more
I think
inclined
it's an
towards.
American thing, man. I think it's like something that like maybe because of like entertainment and just media and like just these like social driving factors that like it's just it maybe subconsciously we're like doing it and we don't even know that we're like operating in life like this, like full steam ahead. And then when it takes you to go somewhere and then realize that no, like the people are not living like this, and it's a completely different vibe, like it's different.
Yeah. So the last point that we have here, since this is the last episode in the pilot series, is just like a simple question, that if you had to tell your younger self one thing about marriage, what would it be? So this can apply to like our younger self, before we got married, or maybe on day one of our marriage, like that kind of giving advice to our younger self. Hmm. It's a tough
I
one.
think the best advice I would give to anybody, or to my younger self, would be just to be open-minded, be very open to change, be open to growing, be open to listening, be open to anything that life throws at you, because life is gonna have its ups and downs, and if you're gonna throw yourself in the gutter every single time something goes down, then you're gonna have a miserable life. So you should have an open mind for everything. Be willing to do everything. Be willing to change. Be willing to do anything
Yeah.
to
The
make
reason I
anybody happy.
struggle a little bit
So
with this
that would
question is that even if that advice is good, like that advice you just said, if I gave that advice to my younger self, I still wouldn't listen to it. Because the thing is, like, it's
really.
Yeah.
right, but like, yeah, I mean, if my older self is telling me to be more open-minded, I'm like, yeah, you're right, but why? But what? I mean, at a certain, you got to learn
No
from
one's
experience.
gonna listen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. You're gonna learn from experience, because no
there's a
matter what you tell a 19, 20, whatever, like that age group, like you're not gonna listen. You're gonna be like, what is this old man telling me? Like, go ahead and sit your 40-year-old over there and like have your chai. Like, just get away from me. I'm in the zone right now. Like, men, like, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a reason you're in that position to be able to give that advice. It's because of what you went through.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's different pieces of
You could
advice
take
I
it
would
or
give to
not, but I'm
myself.
saying, but if you're asking for advice, then you should be willing to take that advice, right? I don't
Yeah.
think there's a person
No, I guess
give me
it's a
advice.
trick.
I'm
It's a trick
curious what
question.
I'm curious what my like Ansar version of myself would give me that I wouldn't listen to.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's something like very specific, like invest in Zoom before the pandemic. I mean, because I don't know. I mean, there's this saying that, like, a wise person learns from the mistakes of fools, and like no, I mean, a wise person learns from the advice, but a fool learns from the I don't know. I messed it up. That's a George Bush
that's a
moment.
George Bush moment.
That's
Yeah,
a George Bush moment. Yeah.
Imam Saba is officially a Texan.
I have access to the YouTube account, so I'm gonna deliberately leave that in. But no, man, when I look back to my old self, like I have to learn from experience. I have to be that fool who learns from experience. And I mean, there's a reason why you don't inherit wisdom. You can inherit information. I mean, yeah, I inherited information and that I have more access to information than my grandparents, but I can't inherit wisdom. And I see this stubbornness that even exists now. Like you said, like, what if my Ansar self from 20 years from now came back and started advising me? I don't know. Maybe I would listen. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
It
So I guess
all depends on what he's saying.
yeah. I guess that last question turned out to be a trick question. Then sorry. So you tried to genuinely answer it, but then maybe you would take your advice. No,
That's why
younger self.
that's why you never go first.
Yeah.
No, I feel like a dummy.
No. I think your younger self would have taken the advice though, because I think you do.
No, I did take my younger self, but I'm saying like.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
My
no, your
man-
younger
oh.
self would have taken the advice. Because I mean, you're mentioning before too about how, like, even when you were going through the process, you listened to the advice of your parents, and like, you just did the right thing on so many different stages, and that's a good thing to do. I mean, it's good not to be knuckleheaded like some of us. So I think that does apply.
Being open-minded helps out in more things than just your marriage. I think everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Sorry,
want to
you
hear
were gonna say
I want to hear some other advice, and I'm not going to be the only one that gave some future advice. You guys got to give something. So I'm not by myself.
Okay, what is advice to younger self?
What is the younger Rabbi Sahib giving himself advice to?
I don't know, man. I guess I would just say don't be so stubborn and take my advice. That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys got? Anything come to your mind? Nothing.
It's not really advice. It's just like you know how things turn out, so you're gonna be like, okay, don't worry, things turn out okay, or this is not as big of a problem as you thought. It's more like
I think that's kind of an important question for when it comes to parenting, though, because if I can't figure out how to get through to myself from like 10 years ago, how am I going to get through to my son? And I know me. So, I mean, that's an important question when it comes to parenting, because we do have to get through to our teenage kids once they reach teenage years. And there's no doubt teenagers, there's going to come a time where our kids actually think that they know better than us. I mean, that's the stage that they go through. So, I mean, maybe now is the time to think about it.
That's an interesting question. I think that maybe that's a very different show about like fatherhood and stuff. But yeah, I think like I'm curious if like how distant maybe some of us feel to our parents, like, oh, they're from a different culture or fobs, whatever. And like, I wonder if like that feeling of distance that they won't get what I'm going through, especially as teens, I wonder if my own son will have that with me. because
Mhm.
yeah, I mean that's something I can think about.
The world has shifted so much. I mean, we were talking about that with social media, that, like our parents' generation and our generation, there's a huge difference between the two. But even though our kids are being raised in the same culture that we're in, like what they're being exposed to and like, just the world that they live in is just so drastically different that, I mean, I can definitely see them thinking that we're out of touch in the same way that maybe we were critical of our parents. And that's just karma at the end of the day. If that happens, then I 100% deserve any kind of stuff my kids throw at me because, I mean, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, yeah, we've come to the end of our time. So, I mean, the themes that we covered today were, day one versus today and expectations versus reality. And in this show, the 5-part series, we tried to just kind of talk about our marriages and what the experiences that we had. So I appreciate you guys participating as well. Because I know, I mean, we participated in this as a tarbiyati exercise. If I went up to Aji outside of this program and said, tell me about your marriage, I don't think you would talk to me about that. I mean, if somebody came up to me and said that, I'd be like, mind your own business. What are you talking about? But then, just for tarbiyati reasons, for this show, I appreciate that you guys, talked about your marriages, some of your experiences. I talked about my experiences. I personally never, ever talk about my marriage. Like it's out of the question. But, again, just for the sake of, the because there's people out there who talk negatively about marriage a lot. Those of us who have happy marriages, maybe we should be more vocal. Maybe it shouldn't take a show to kind of bring it out of us. Maybe we should just casually talk about fun, happy experiences in our marriage, so that
Yeah.
those kind of negative jokes don't take over the perception of what marriage is and then influence young
Yeah,
people.
that's true. And it's only the negatives that carry through. They're the ones that are easy to talk about. It. Well, oh,
I
the
think this
divorce
is very
rates are so
this
high.
is a
And
good initiative. This is a good initiative for the Khuddam to have because like I know the Lajna side they talk about marriage a lot, but there's not that much stuff from the U.S. From the Khuddam that talk about how to be a good husband. So I think this is a very good initiative that we have going on to kind of help the youth kind of.
I mean, there's a lot of emphasis from that kind of theoretical perspective, but then, of course, we're trying to get on that personal level. Because I mean, yeah, we know like, the references, we got the PowerPoint slides, of course, there's not as much emphasis maybe on the men's side sometimes as there is on the women's side. I don't know the numbers on that, but like, yeah, that personal aspect is definitely something that we, maybe we want to emphasize more. So Jazakallah for you guys' participation, and then I'll turn it over to Mu'tamin Tarbiyat Sahib Azam Akram to close us out.
Jazakallah Asmza for all of your participation. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So this was a pilot project where we wanted to see how comfortable and uh, valuable these conversations would be. And Alhamdulillah, I think there's a lot of golden nuggets that have come out of how we can have these conversations, how to improve our lives. If we're thinking about getting married or are married, there's something unique in all of these presentations that we can all learn from. We've also been live streaming on YouTube, so I know there's a chat there. There's a gentleman, Tawa, who asked, "Are we reading this?" Yes, we're reading this. So if you wanna reach out to MKUSA, Majlis Ghulam Lamdia, USA, you can do so at the Tarbiyat department, which is Tarbiyat, TARBIYYAT, at mkusa.org, with some of your ideas and suggestions and your feedback. So may Allah Ta'ala bless us all. May Allah Ta'ala bless our relationships. May Allah Ta'ala bless us and our our quest for this amazing spiritual journey that a marriage provides for all of us. So may Allah Ta'ala allow us to find and first of all, I think I like what Saud said. Be the change that you want to see in the world. And at the end of the day, this is an introspective look, and that's very rarely done by many people. And so you have an opportunity to go back to YouTube and watch any of these, share, like, promote, and hopefully in the next year we plan to have more of these conversations with different varying topics based on your feedback. So at the end, Imam Saab or Murabi Saab, if you can close us with a silent prayer.
Please join in silent prayer. Ameen.